Welcome back, class, to part two of the Digital Gaming and Media Playground. So let's think more about the economics of the gaming industry. We talked about money in. Let's talk about money out. So let's talk about development of games. So you have to pay software designers and for designing, coding, scoring, testing games, also updating games, and so the development, marketing, and licensing constitute the major expenditures in game publishing, and the games with AAA game titles can cost even more than blockbuster film to make and promote. So the developmental budget pays for writers to create the concept and storyline of a game, artists to design characters and scenery, and actors to voice characters, and programmers to turn the ideas and images into computer code. But, as expensive as all of that is, the successful launch of a game involves online promotions, banner ads, magazine print ads, in-store displays, and the most expensive of all, television ads. So as costly as development can be, big game releases spend even more money on this marketing. In many ways, the marketing blitz associated with introducing a major new franchise title, including cinematic television trailers, resembles the promotional campaign surrounding the debut of a blockbuster movie. So for example, the game Destiny, one of the most expensive games developed to date, a 500 million massively multiplayer online first-person shooter game by Activision. About 140 million of that price tag was the cost of game development, with the remaining 360 million going to marketing. Some of the other titles have cost more than 100 million to make and market are Call of Duty 2, Grand Theft Auto 5, Final Fantasy 7, and Star Wars The Old Republic. So independent game makers must also deal with two types of licensing. First, they have to pay royalties to console manufacturers like Sony, Nintendo, or Microsoft for the right to distribute a game using their system, and the royalties vary from $3 to $10 per unit sold. And the other form of licensing involves intellectual properties, things like stories, characters, personalities, and music that require licensing agreements. So in 2005, for instance, John Madden reportedly signed a $150 million deal with EA Sports that allowed the company to use his name and likeness for the following 10 years. So let's switch gears now and talk about self-regulation of the gaming industry. So though many people view gaming as simple leisure activity, the digital gaming industry has sparked lots of controversy. Parents and politicians have expressed concern about the content of some games, whereas other critics say the portrayal of women and minorities in games is either non-existent or troubling. Meanwhile, the gaming industry has argued that it qualifies for free speech protection and that its ratings and regulations should not necessarily bear the force of law. So, regarding self-regulation, back in 1976, an arcade game called Death Race prompted the first public outcry over violence in digital gaming. The primitive graphics of the game depicted a blocky car running down stick figure gremlins that, if struck, turned into grave markers. Described as sick and morbid by the National Safety Council, Death Race inspired a 60 Minutes report on the potential psychological damage of playing video games. Since then, violent video games have prompted citizens groups and politicians to call for government regulation of the digital game content. In 1993, after the violence of Mortal Kombat and Night Trap attracted the attention of religious and educational organizations, the U.S. Senator Joe Lieberman conducted a hearing that proposed federal regulation of the gaming industry. Following a pattern established in the movie and music industries, the gaming industry implemented a self-regulation system enforced by an industry panel. So you've probably seen this rating if you've looked at video games. The industry founded the Entertainment Software Rating Board, ESRB, Entertainment Software Rating Board to institute a labeling system designed to inform parents of sexual and violent content that might not be suitable for young players. Currently, the ESRB sorts games into 6 categories: EC for early childhood, E for everyone, E10 plus, everyone ages 10 and over, T for teen, M is mature 17 plus, and AO is adults only 18 plus. So it's important to look at those labels when you're purchasing games. So let's talk a little bit more about free speech and video games. Though 80% of all retail outlets voluntarily chose to observe ESRB guidelines and not sell M and AO rated games to minors, the ratings did not have the force of law. In 2005, California tried to make renting or selling M-rated games to a minor an offense enforced by fines. And the law, of course, was immediately challenged by the industry and struck down by a lower court as unconstitutional. California petitioned the Supreme Court to hear the case, and in this landmark decision, handed down in 2011, which I have here in your slides, the Supreme Court granted digital games speech protections afforded by the First Amendment. According to the opinion written by Justice Antonin Scalia, video games communicate ideas worthy of such protection. So those are the First Amendment rights. Scalia even mentions Mortal Kombat in footnote 4 of the decision. Questionably more cultured and intellectually edifying than playing Mortal Kombat. But these cultural and intellectual differences are not constitutional ones. Crudely violent video games, tawdry TV shows, cheap novels and magazines are no less forms of speech than the Divine Comedy, Dante's Divine Comedy. And even if we can see them nothing of any possible value for society, they are as much entitled to the protection of free speech as the best of literature. So, like the protected books, plays, and movies that preceded them, video games communicate ideas and even social messages, though many familiar literary devices such as characters, dialogue, plot, and music, and through features distinctive to the medium, such as the player's interaction with the virtual world. However, as in the music, TV, and film industries, the First Amendment protections will not make the rating system for the gaming industry go away. Parents continue to have legitimate concerns about the games their children play. Game publishers and retailers understand it is in their best interest to respect those concerns, even though the ratings cannot be enforced by law. So let's talk about lessons learned from video games. There are lots of learning games that we have used in our past throughout school, and maybe you've used ABC Mouse or something like that. But let's talk about Minecraft, a recent movie that's been a blockbuster hit in the theaters. Stealth financial lessons. It's been said that a huge value placed on the business offers a big lesson in finance, but that's hardly the only way that Minecraft teaches about money. The game itself is chock full of important lessons, says Jesse Stay, who co-authored Minecraft for Dummies with his 12-year-old son, Thomas. Budgeting, trading, supply and demand, and understanding the value of what you own are ideas that are at the core of Minecraft, says Stay. Kids are learning finance and they don't even realize it's happening. So cultural questions we might ask ourselves at the end of our gaming chapter here. But, are games a blessing or blight? Are they good for society? Are they not good for society? What about gender sensitivity? So a lot of the female characters are maybe non-existent, or if they are shown as you can see on the screen here. So what about that? Is that something that needs to be addressed? What do you think? Thank you for listening today. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and we will see you next for Chapter 11 Advertising. Have a great one.